With our isolation interviews this time, we head to Sydney and grab Kiwi trainer Chris Waller. Chris, first of all, before we get into it, obviously changes in a lot of things, especially racing in Australia, but also back home in New Zealand with the lockdown. What about family? How are they coping back here?
Yeah, I've spoken to my mum and dad. They're okay, and yeah, taking it pretty seriously as we all should be, and just hoping that that curve stays under control and we don't see some hot spots, yeah, appearing where we work, where we live, or wherever we may be around the world. So very concerning time, and yeah, times for change. And we're certainly fortunate that racing is going responsibly in Australia. But first and foremost, we've got to make sure our staff stay safe, and obviously we're not taking anything home to our families and loved ones.
Absolutely. A big weekend, obviously, the first week at Championships. But before we get you there, just look back on last weekend. Terrific win from Very Elegant in the Randwick. How's she come through?
She's come through it really well, so yeah, it was good to see her winning with such ease, and prompted us to head to the Queen Elizabeth next Saturday. So yeah, she's certainly going in there with great form, and she's hit form at the right time of the year. So
Yeah.
she's a great New Zealand export, and one that yeah, we're looking forward to the next few years. Really, she's only a 4-year-old and got a big career ahead of her.
Absolutely. I think you've got something like 16 still in contention, that Queen Elizabeth. What will you get that Queen Elizabeth team down to?
Oh, we'd get it down to, I guess, 3 or 4. But the difference this year is I think owners will expect their horses to run if they can. There's no Queensland, so a
Yeah.
lot of our second tier horses would normally be taking to a Hollandale or Doomben Cup. Not this year. They'll be having a crack at the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh prize money, whatever's on offer. So I think you'll see a really big field, and obviously not quite the depth, but certainly big on numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a massive team in this weekend. We'll just quickly get thoughts on a few of these races. First of all, the Carbine Club Stakes. Reloaded was terrific in Group 1 company last time out. What's the reason for the drop back to 16 for this?
Well, we thought about the Derby, but I just feel there's plenty of time for him, and in my opinion, he might have struggled to win the Derby to beat Calcavecchio and some of the higher credentialed stayers.
Yeah.
He's still got a bit of brilliance. He's by Schnitzel. He's Group 1 placed over a mile, so I think bringing him back in trip. He's also in the Doncaster, but he needs
Yeah.
3 scratchings to gain a start. So we thought he might have been a fringe horse to get in. We just missed there, but the Carbine Club looks the next alternative. And if we get it wrong, and if he does stay, well, we've always got Caulfield Cups and that in the spring.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kubrick's in the same race. How does he measure up?
Measures up well, but not if the track's wet. His 2 runs this preparation have both been on rain-affected tracks, and he just doesn't enjoy them at all. So don't even be surprised to see him pulled out if the track's a 7 or worse.
Okay, yeah, Toffee, Tongue, and Betcha Flying, both in the Adrian Knox. Are they on Oaks paths?
Well, this race will tell us. It's been quite a good race to as a lead up into the Oaks in the past, coming through the back door. Obviously, the better ones ran in the Vinery last week with Funstar, Probabile, and a few others. So these two are our second tier horses, but they're both bred to get a trip, and their form isn't too bad. So they're rough chances in a 3-year-old filly handicap.
Yeah, how many could you have on the Oaks next week?
I don't know just yet. I'd say a couple. With Funstar, we're leaning towards the Cornwall Legacy against the
Okay.
older mares, keeping it to
Yeah.
a mile. She's been set for the Oaks all along, but I just think she's got a bit too much brilliance and a bit too much speed for an Oaks at this stage. So yet to make a final decision, but we're leaning towards the Cornwall Legacy. So getting back to your question, probably a horse like Nudge would now be promoted to our main hope. She ran third in the Group 1 Vinery last week, and one of these two if they run well tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, on to the Chairman's Quality, Youngstar and Gayatri in there. Thoughts on those two?
Both running well. Youngstar's going to appreciate the big drop in grade, and she'll like the distance, 2,600 metres. Interestingly, she's a sister to Funstar, so she won 2 Oaks. She won an Adelaide Oaks and a Queensland Oaks, so she is an out and out stay, yet Funstar's still got the brilliance. So back to handicap tomorrow. Youngstar's very well weighted. Gayatri ran a good race last start in mare's grade, and she'll get the distance as well too. So both very good chances.
Chris, really looking forward to the TJ Smith. You've got Nature Strip in there, Drawn Barrier 1 with James McDonald doing the riding. We're seeing him at his brilliant best and know his quality. What can we expect from him tomorrow?
Well, hopefully that. So he's Drawn Barrier 1. He's won 3 or 4 Group 1 races in the last 12 months at his brilliant best. He's as good as any horse in the world in terms of sprinting. So we're hoping we can see that tomorrow. Any track conditions, he seems to be fine. I guess you could say he's a little bit vulnerable at 1200, but in my opinion, his best win was over 1200 metres down the straight at Flemington. So if he brings that form, and he showed a hint of it last start when he was dominant in the challenge over 1,000. So if he does things right and James can contain that early speed, he'll be very hard to beat.
And then on to the Doncaster, and what a team! 8+. We spoke about Reloaded being on the emergencies as well. How do you to measure them up, not only against each other, but against the likes of Brandenburg and Melody Bell?
Yeah, I think being a handicap, you don't sort of expect any one horse to be a certainty, and it's a classic Doncaster this year,
Yeah.
and we've been through the field fairly thoroughly, and we see Melody Bell as the one to beat. But my 2 best hopes are down in the weights. Imaging, who's unfortunately drawn very wide. He would have been my first selection had he drawn better.
Yeah.
For now, I'd be going for Shared Ambition. Down in the weights, he's a really good horse. He'll handle the conditions, and he's drawn perfectly. So I think both those 2 are our best. Then you start putting in the top weight horses like Colding, who won a Epsom, and the Golden Eagle last preparation. But now he's up at the top. 57 kilos. It's going to be very hard, so that brings him back to the field. Kingswood Dream, very, very similar. He was a bit disappointing in the Australian Cup last start, but hopefully we can see him bounce back under handicap conditions. Mr. Sea Wolf, he's a very good horse. He won $1 million race here in the spring, but again, up in the weights. Yulong Prince, I'd probably put him in as my 3rd sort of seed.
Yeah.
He's got the right weight profile. He's drawn well. He handles soft and heavy tracks, and his 2 runs back from a spell have both been very good. Night's Watch won last start over 2,000 metres, a 7-day backup back to a mile. He was placed in the Toorak in the spring, so he's got mile form and a pretty light weight, and I think that's about it.
I think it is. Geez, they've done a good job to remember them all for sure. Just obviously championship times, and we sort of, especially over the last few years, it's all been about Winks. How will it be going to a championships without her there?
A lot less stressful, that's for sure. Yeah, just thinking back to it, it was sort of, I guess, 51 weeks ago. So we're in their last preparation. We finally got there without being defeated, and then the last prep, we had 4 runs, and we were just counting them down one at a time, and finally we're into her last run. So everything we were doing for the last time, whether it be galloping her, inspecting her, pre-race checks, you name it, and then finally the big day came. So yeah, it was just one thing after another. Normally Doncaster Day, we used to take her to Randwick for what we call an exhibition gallop. So quite often that to me was more important than the actual Doncaster being run on the day. So that's how much went into her and what we did with the build up. And yeah, when she finally hit the front in the Queen Elizabeth 51 weeks ago, it was pretty special and a lot less weight on my shoulders.
Absolutely. Chris, back home in New Zealand with the lockdown, we're calling them bubbles, where you put into a group of people and you try not to go outside your bubble. If you were in one of those bubbles and you had one racing personality to be in there with, who would it be?
Probably Hugh Bowman. We could talk about Winks.